Hello and welcome to podcast.init, the podcast about Python and the people who make it great. When you're ready to launch your next app or you want to try a project you hear about on the show, you'll need somewhere to deploy it, so take a look at our friends over at Linode. With 200 gigabit private networking, scalable shared block storage, node balancers, and a 40 gigabit public network, all controlled by a brand new API, you've got everything you need to scale up. And for your tasks that need fast computation, such as training machine learning models or running your CI pipelines, they just launched dedicated CPU instances. In addition to that, they just launched a new data center in Toronto, and they've got one opening in Mumbai at the end of 2019. Go to pythonpodcast.com/linode, that's Linode today, to get a $20 credit and launch a new server in under a minute. And don't forget to thank them for their continued support of the show. And you can visit the site at pythonpodcast.com to subscribe to the show, sign up for the mailing list, read the show notes, and get in touch. And if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, I'd love to hear them. And to help other people find the show, please leave a review on iTunes and tell your friends and coworkers. Your host, as usual, is Tobias Macy, and today I'm interviewing Pablo Ruiz Múzquiz about Taiga, a project management platform for agile developers and designers and project managers who want a beautiful tool that makes work truly enjoyable. So, Pablo, can you start by introducing yourself?
Sure. So my name is Pablo. In Matryoshka's terms, that would be that's Europe, Spain, and Madrid. Let's say academic background-wise, it's physics and computer science. Hobby-wise, that would be literature, role-playing games, and traditional archery. Activism-wise, civil rights, free and open-source software, of course, transversal feminism, and promotion of critical thinking and science in society. In terms of professional career, I'm currently CEO of Kaleidos. It's a quite bizarre IT company in Spain that has, various innovation and incubation schemes that actually gave birth to Taiga, where I'm co-CEO with professional investor and friend Ricky Posner.
And do you remember how you first got introduced to Python?
I do. We have to go back in time to 1997. So I was studying my master's degree in physics. I was involved in running students' association computers, the type of service that would give students an email account that we have to access through Telnet and use Pine and all that. It was so much fun, and I had to choose between Perl and Python as the scripting language, to do some system tasks. And somehow, I don't know, perhaps it was the functional influence that Python had, or the fact it was also very science friendly, or I don't know, perhaps I love the tutorial and all the Monty Python's puns. So I chose Python. And at the time, it was not an easy choice, because Perl was predominant. But it turned out that I got rewarded almost immediately because, over the next few years, I found that decision to be helping me achieve some great stuff, whether it was hacking, software hacking, some open documentation project that I started. I needed a templating system, computational physics, also benefited from that decision. Game development using Blender. I actually sent money into 2002 when Blender needed they did this crowdfunding when there was no crowdfunding. They had this to make sure they could release the source code as open source. So I used Python 1.4. That's my first Python release. Yeah, so over 20 years now.
Yeah, I think I started in the 2.3 or 2.4 time range, so a little while after you, but it's definitely great to see how far it's come along in the years.
Yeah.
And so you said that at Kaleidos you have spun out the Taiga project as a product from that group. So can you start by explaining a bit about what the Taiga platform is and the overall reason for building it?
Yeah, so you said, Taiga is an agile project management platform. And I think 4 or 5 years ago, we had two reasons to build it. We would do it again. One, there was no truly open source agile project management platform back then. You had and you still have Redmine or Track, which is actually written in Python, but there was no truly open source agile project management platform. These two platforms were great management platforms, but they were not really agile. They were open source but not agile, or not for the agile project. And two, we had these obsessions about being able to develop an open source platform for end users that was beautiful, was slick. Like a nice example of, open source software that is also super user friendly. And I think we succeeded in both, to have these open source plus agile and a slick tool. So that was the reason.
Yeah, and I had previous experience running Redmine, one of the first jobs that I worked at in technology, and I've also come across Track because it's used in a few different projects in the Python ecosystem, but both of them are fairly obtuse and difficult to get set up and get to a usable state if you don't know intimately what you're doing. So I definitely appreciated when I came across Taiga the fact that you have a lot of built-in sort of instruction and fairly well put together onboarding for being able to get an instance deployed and be able to have it in a usable format for being able to do some project management versus what existed before then. So definitely good work on that front. And it was nice when I found Taiga that it was something that, as I said, was a little easier to get up and running because before then, a lot of the existing open source options or self-hosted options were either written in PHP, which is fine, but as you said, they weren't agile oriented, or the few Python options were a little bit more convoluted and difficult to get set up.
Yeah, I mean, we were great fans of Track and Redmine. They're great platforms. It's true that we wanted a Python-based one. Track is Python-based, but it was clearly focused on very different audience or use cases. So it's that those times where you just sit down and say we will have to build it ourselves. Now you can do it as a copycat, or you can definitely pursue a new concept or be original and new, and also try to make some points. And I think we are in that sense we're sort of genuine, if you can say that, and yeah, and we also try to make a business model out of it. Perhaps we can talk about that later. But at the core, it's a truly open source platform.
And as you pointed out, there have been project management tools, both open source and proprietary, for basically as long as we've had, well, as long as we've had teams, but in terms of software offerings, as long as we've had computers that were able to, handle the presentation logic. And so I'm curious if you can give a bit of context in terms of how Taiga fits into that overall ecosystem, both now and what that landscape looked like at the time when you first started working on Taiga.
Yeah. As you say, there've been project management platforms for a long time. I think there are a lot of them. I think they're second only to e-commerce platforms. Um, it is for Taiga. It's above all, it is a massively fragmented market. It's not just that there are a lot, but also it's a fragmented market. Except for a few notable exceptions. So when you go to this crowded market where there's lots of options, you need to make sure that you have some meaning, some reason to exist. Otherwise, you just yet another platform. There are many, and the vast majority are closed source, of course. So we said, okay, what might make Taiga worth existing and worth developing? So we can start with Agile at its core, not just Scrum and Kanban, but making sure we follow the Agile manifesto, the Agile principles. That was very important. Open source is one important asset for Taiga. A lot of people will go for Taiga because it's open source. A lot of people will just use it because they like it. But a lot of people will they have this filter. I have this filter, and it's like if it's not open source, I won't use it. Period. So you can download and run it behind your firewall. So have it on premise. We also decided that we wanted to make sure that it was meant for multidisciplinary teams. And this is very important for us. A lot of platforms will just focus on one or two type of users and will alienate other users. We wanted to make sure that multidisciplinary teams could work together and that Taiga was not meant just for software development, but for any type of project. And then a nice UI. These days, it's true, and it was true 4 or 5 years ago, some people will just use software because it's prettier than the competition. So with Agile, open source, multidisciplinary teams, not just for software development, which is for some reason like every project management platform tries to solve that use case, and it has some issues. I think that there's a fundamental problem there. And on As UI, that makes a compelling case for Taiga, I think.
And as you pointed out, the market for project management is quite fragmented, where they're dividing lines along the sort of style of project management. So whether it's agile or or waterfall, or whether it's focused on a particular type of team. So it could be for sales teams, or it could be for software teams, or as you said, it might be for cross-functional teams, or there might be requirements in terms of the sort of reporting capabilities. And so I'm wondering what it is about the overall problem domain of project management that makes it so complex to build a tool for, and what it is that leads so many people to try and solve the problem over again, and why there isn't as much standardization or consensus on one given tool, unless it's something that is so flexible that you might as well just write your own tool from scratch to get the actual workflow that you need.
So I see that's a two-part question. Let me answer the second part first. I think people are just obsessed with building tools as the recipe for success. So they will feel that given the right tool, team dynamics, processes, and everything will just flourish. And instead of, it's like the same obsession with frameworks. Like instead of developing the end product, people sometimes say, okay, I'll just build first the framework, and then one end result of the framework will be this product that I had in mind. So I think a lot of people get stuck in developing project management instead of going and just doing the project. But as for the first part, these challenges, the unique challenges about project management. Well, I personally firmly believe that any project management methodology is better than having none. Just have one. That would be my main, piece of advice. But I also believe that Agile is statistically much better suited for the vast majority of projects. Having said that, and in my experience, having managed many projects throughout all these years, I would say that project management is more about the team than the project itself. So that is really the challenge. And that means how the team works together, how expectations and trust are managed. It means that you should be able to predict the future as much as you can. You need to understand the value of frequent introspection because you want to improve. And when I say a team, and you used that term earlier, I include all stakeholders, including the customer / user. Otherwise, you might end up with a dysfunctional team. When people complain about a project they're working on, I think they very quickly point to stuff that is very much related to team dynamics, not the project itself. Not the end goal, but team dynamics. So be careful with egos. Toxic behavior, the problematic absence of I'm sorry's, at least in Western culture. All those need to be addressed, but also, solidarity, team commitment, being a professional, which combines, honesty, generosity, and red lines, saying no. So you have all these challenges, and you go and you have to build a project management platform. And this, and you don't want to stay in the way of the team. And at the same time, you want to reinforce these virtuous behaviors, which in the case of Taiga is quite ironic, since that the first Agile principles say something like individuals and interactions over processes and tools, and Taiga is a tool. So how can Taiga, as a tool, lobby in favor of individuals and interactions? That is our unique challenge. And other platforms in other domains don't have. But here we have a tool that despises tools, or at least that considers itself to be potentially misleading. And this is, people have to understand, you are writing something that would say it shouldn't exist. Thankfully, the principle says over. It doesn't say against. It doesn't say individuals' interactions against. It just says over. So it's a matter of prevalence. It's not binary. So we had to be very careful, to carefully deal with Taiga's role within the team dynamics. And this has made a lot of people love Taiga, but also have made a lot of people reject Taiga. This little obsession with the first principle, Agile principle, is problematic for some people. I mean, they won't say it out loud, they won't admit it, but some people really want to be Agile, but through processes and tools. And Taiga has an issue with that. We don't want to overcharge that part of the sentence.
And so, can you talk now about how Taiga itself is actually implemented and some of the main features that it provides to enable effective project management and agile workflows?
Yeah, so well, Taiga is fundamentally a RESTful API. That is what it is. Underlying technology is it's Python, of course. Then you get Django REST Framework, PostgreSQL, RabbitMQ for async notification, and a nice AngularJS frontend using CoffeeScript. That is, technology that we're using. The design of that has evolved a little bit over time, but nothing really dramatic. We have a work in progress and some evolution to newer versions of AngularJS, but what's changed is mostly work around performance. And that means query optimization, database polishing, things like that. And, at Taiga, we're fans of sustainable development, and it seems we did a great job at the beginning, except for the front end, perhaps. We haven't had many instances of these infamous, we can't do that, Taiga wasn't meant to do it, quite on the contrary. Now, you want me to cover the features? I mean, Taiga's main entity is a project, and a project has a team of people, and you can be part of many projects through different teams. Now, a project can enjoy Scrum, the Scrum Agile framework, or Kanban, or both if you know what you're doing. Some people do activate both modules. So that's right. You could have sprints, and in parallel, you can make use of Kanban, for those same user stories. So with Scrum, you get your backlog, burn down charts, sprints, which actually feature a Kanban-style workflow for user stories tasks. We call it the sprint task board. And then Kanban is your typical Kanban with columns, WIP limit, etc. We also have a ticketing system called issues, which is very powerful and easy to use. We have Epic user stories module 2 that can contain local project user stories or external projects user stories, useful for Bird's view management. We have a nice wiki module for documentation. We have a straightforward video conference system. And so every Epic user story, task, or issue enjoys assignments, watchers, comments, tags, blog status, due date, attachments, workflows. User stories in particular can be estimated. So you can customize nearly everything. We also have super flexible filters and search functionality and desktop, in-app, and email notifications. So a typical workflow would first have to decide, whether Scrum or Kanban works best. You have committed capacity and you need certain predictability over what's coming next. You normally tend to choose Scrum, right? If you don't have that, or you prefer to focus instead of detecting bottlenecks along the user story lifecycle, you most probably prefer Kanban, which is apparently simpler, but I believe requires a much more mature team. That's my opinion. You create your new Taiga project, you select your project template, you can change later that decision if you want. That's okay. You can start with Scrum and then move on to Kanban. That's okay. You can go with default values for everything and start creating your stuff, or you can go to admin, which is super user-friendly. I think that's one of the key. I think I forgot to mention that is one of the key differentiations for Taiga in this crowded market. Super easy admin, and you can go there and make Taiga look the way you want. And then you typically invite other team members. You assign roles, and that's it. You can start working right away.
And one of the things that I liked too, as I was playing around with it before this conversation, is the ability to import directly from other tools such as Trello or GitHub, so that if you have already been getting started, but you didn't go to the full effort of getting a certain project management tool set up, but you were already using one of these lightweight options, you can transition your existing state without having to start from scratch and go through the process of manually entering all of those things all over again.
Yeah, I think we made the decision of helping people do the transition, I think 2 years ago, because we felt that typically, projects tend to last, months or even years. And so for a team, might be, too much to just start from scratch using Taiga, even if they love Taiga. So we have these importing mechanisms. Also, we have exporting mechanisms, not back to those platforms that you mentioned, but for any other Taiga instance, we feel that your data is yours. So you could export any project on one Taiga instance and import it back into another one. But this idea of integration, I think it's comes across a lot in Taiga.
Yeah, and I think the fact that you broke out the back end from the front end and that the primary communication is just over those REST APIs was a good choice because, one, it makes it so that all of those REST APIs are first class concerns within the back end and within the data model, so that it makes it simpler for being able to integrate with other tools, but also it means that one, you can host your front end as static assets on something like S3 or a CDN separately from deploying the application. And it also makes it easier if somebody wants to write their own UI on top of those APIs without necessarily having to take everything that you've already done, or if they have opinions, or also for your own purposes, if you want to be able to evolve the front end separately from the application so that you can continue to use what's already been written, but then once you have something that's fully functional as a replacement, you just have to switch it over without having to go through all the process of decoupling the UI elements from the backend repo.
Yeah, actually, we have a lot of people will develop API centric, and it will never really get used out of their own platform. It's just an architecture choice, and with this potential that you just described. But we had uh, an amazing example of what you can achieve with that, because a year ago or a year and a half ago, we got this email out of the blue from this guy called Alex from Germany, from this company called TechFunder, and the email said something like, uh, "Hey, I just finished developing this native Taiga app for Android, iOS, and Windows. What do you want me to do? What we do with this?" And lo and behold, there was all this work that had been developed by this team completely in the dark. We didn't know about this. And just through the API documentation, they were able to develop a fully functional Taiga native app. It's not the Taiga official app. We cannot call that the Taiga official app, but it's amazing, that someone could do that. That means the API is well documented, of course, but also the potential is there, and in this case it was tangible. So, and a lot of people will use Taiga's API for a lot of very weird integrations. We have some very nice examples going on because there's no one tool to rule them all. Fortunately, I believe people have ecosystems, have many tools, and to be able to be part of that ecosystem and be, easily integratable, I think is great, and it's easier when your front end is using the same API. It's not just an afterthought. It's this other API developed, later, and is used just for integrations. It is actually the core products API. We have out-of-the-box integrations for major tools. We have webhooks. We have live CSV exports. You can do a lot of stuff without using the API. But in the end, you can rely on the API for anything you want. You can actually do more stuff using the API than using the current front end.
And I think that that approach is definitely valuable, particularly for a project management tool, because as you said, there is no one service that is going to rule the entirety of somebody's workflow for project management or product development, because, the actual development work is going to be happening on GitHub or GitLab or whatever your source control platform of choice happens to be. So unless you want to incorporate all of that functionality into Taiga, then you need to be able to have some way of communicating between those platforms, or maybe you need to be able to integrate with your sales CRM, and you want to be able to track status of the overall sales funnel in your project management tool. Again, unless you want to eventually end up reinventing all of the different services somebody's going to need to be able to get their work done, you need to be able to have some sort of ecosystem option where other people can plug in the functionality that they want and not have to have it be dictated ahead of time by the people driving the product roadmap for their product management tool.
Yeah, well, I have a strong opinions on that. I mean, about how all the companies do address that ecosystem scenario. But let's move on, and perhaps later we can discuss some examples, because it's happening. There's people focusing on one particular use case or a niche platform, while others want to make sure they cover every single thing the company needs or organization needs. And sometimes it's just patching together too much stuff, too many tools, and it just feels Frankenstein.
And so that's a good opportunity to talk about your ideas of how you approach the overall usability and user experience of people using Taiga, and how you balance that against the push for adding in every feature that somebody might want, to the point where Taiga becomes so flexible that it's ultimately unusable. And in order to actually get something functional, you're essentially just rebuilding all of the project logic from scratch. So I don't know what your thoughts or approaches are in terms of maintaining that balance.
Well, it's impossible. It's impossible to maintain that balance, and this is our little nightmare, actually. Because we want to appeal to almost any agile-oriented team out there, whether it's software development, what they do, or just planning a wedding. And we got hundreds and hundreds of feature requests around this very topic. User flexibility, customization. Most of these feature requests go around flexibility and customization. And because they want to make Taiga more and more central to the project and team dynamics. In essence, they want more tool and less individuals and interactions. So it is amazing how people are attracted to Taiga by its simplicity and streamlined nature, and then they come to us and ask this very super trivial tiny feature that would make Taiga so perfect. And when we listen to these people, because we have regular video calls with users and all that, most of the time they need more control over what people are doing. They need more workflow triggers. They need more time monitoring. They need more permission-based action. So now we could develop all of that. Sometimes really these features are simply to add, but we have to review our agenda as a platform. How much team conversation do we want to take place within our borders? I can tell you a lot of platforms will say, everything. We want everything to happen here. With me, come here. It's everything here. But we don't want that. So what we do is we study the underlying problem that made that issue to appear, and in the first place, and we dissect that problem, and we see if there is a Taiga way to solve the problem and still, keep Taiga focused. Sometimes the solution is to leave some options as advanced configuration, so it's just not default. Sometimes the solution is to make Taiga just more intuitive in those specific problematic fields, so that those teams don't have to be super creative with Taiga. Sometimes we concede. Sometimes we say, okay, you're right. Sometimes we just end up saying no. You have to be able to say no with some elegance, and there's reasons, and you have to explain. But sometimes you have to say no. So it's really challenging to keep this balance. But you learn a lot about how people use your product and their own challenges. And it's amazing how they believe, and that it's related to why people keep developing, project management platforms, how they believe that it is the tool that will sort out all those problems. But unfortunately, if we said yes to everything we got asked, we would end up being, I don't know, something really horrific. And some tools have ended up like that. Just saying, okay, you want that. I don't want to lose you as a customer or as a user. We will give you that. And then it's just advanced options or more configuration, and all that streamlined process just gets lost. And all that simplicity gets lost. And so sometimes you have to say, you like Taiga because it's this way. I'm going to say no, and it's better for you. I need to explain this. Be patronizing, with the users. That's forbidden. But so we try to find the underlying problem and give a Taiga compliant solution to that. But it is a nightmare. Super problematic. Yeah.
And playing into that again is the fact that you do have these APIs, so that for at least certain cases where somebody wants to embed a certain workflow logic or restrictions or capabilities into the platform itself, they are still able to create some bolt-on integration that will provide what they need without necessarily having to be integrated for everybody who ever uses Taiga. And so they can solve some of their own problems that way. And so I'm sure that there is opportunity either for you or for third-party vendors to be able to provide those integration services for people who do want to add those workflow customizations.
Yes, there's actually one very common example of that, and that's reporting. And reporting needs are very, very different across the whole world, and different teams need different reporting capabilities. So we decided that Taiga would have some reporting, but we'll just say if you want more than this, there are niche tools that do great reporting. You just use the API as a source, and you can play with that, and you can just enjoy all these capabilities for these reporting platforms, and keep Taiga just for project management. So, and we know there are many private Taiga instances around the world behind big organization firewalls, very big ones, and the main reason that we have those Taiga instances deployed, even if we cannot reach them, is because the API and how easy it is to integrate Taiga with other corporate services or whatever. So yeah, I think it's easier to say no to some features when you can say, but you have the API, or when you can say, but we have this flexibility here, or we can say, it's open source. So I think other platforms cannot say that. We can do that. So we probably minimize the pain that exists when you say no repeatedly, to your users.
And one of the challenges and tensions that arises when dealing with any open source project is the idea of governance and roadmap. And so I'm wondering what your approach is on that front to ensure that you do have the ability to maintain the ideology and direction of the project while still allowing for community contribution and engagement, and also what your approach is as far as licensing for Taiga to ensure its future success as an open source project.
Yeah, so I mean, Taiga is a piece of software, and I think in terms of responsibility for maintaining this project, as any engineering endeavor, I think you should focus on technical depth, sustainable development, and user validation. So we make sure that Taiga addresses those, because very often products have a great start and then somehow they just turn into a horrible mess, and nobody knows how or when it happened. And I think one of the reasons is because teams, this responsibility gets diluted somehow. But I think at Taiga, we make sure that we have the whole team protecting and owning the end result, the product, and we do incremental development, and we have, I think, many of the best practices in place. So the community plays a big role. We would like it to play a bigger one, and we're working on that. But for instance, we have 22 languages translated into Taiga, or Taiga translated to 22 languages, just thanks to the community, which is amazing how it's a lot of people will use Taiga because it feels native to them. They will say, oh, I want in Hebrew, or I want in Farsi or Korean. So you have to be able to deal with all those contributions, pull requests, and all that in a sustainable manner. You have to protect, because if you say no to a feature request by a random user, why would you say yes to any contribution that comes from the community? You have to follow the same strict principles, and we have a contribution policy in place. So yeah. What was the second part, sorry, of the question?
The rest of it was just asking about your approach to licensing and how that plays into your vision for sustainability for the project.
Taiga is licensed under the AGPL version 3. So that's Affero GPL, which is uncommon, and not as uncommon as people believe. I think last FOSDEM in Brussels, there was this talk about someone that said people believe that Affero GPL is not as successful and they're wrong. And so we decided that we, as a platform that provides a service over the web, whether it's the API or the front end, when you create such product in 2014, 2015, you had to say, what do in terms of licensing, you can go for the typical GPL version 3 or version 2, or you can go for a mid-based or, BSD license, more free software or open source. But when you have a service, and you want to make sure that service stays free and open, the obvious choice has to be AGPL. And I think it's part of our agenda. Why AGPL? Well, people that know AGPL know that is a very is opinionated licensing scheme. Is about what the type of internet that we want to build. We want to build services that are basically black boxes, services that are typically black boxes, or do you want to provide a service, but also provide all the freedom that came with that? So at the moment, anyone that would like to fork, contribute, provide any Taiga service themselves can do so, provided their users can access their source code. And in terms of contributions and community help and everything, it hasn't been an issue. So, and for us as a small company, I think it actually protects our interest much more than other not so service-oriented licenses.
And so, in terms of the overall engagement of an individual and a team with Taiga when they're going through a product lifecycle, you talked a bit about the workflow, but I'm wondering if you can talk about your thoughts on who's responsible for the overall success and adherence to whatever the sort of project management tenets are within a given team, if it's something that should be driven by a project manager as a role, or if it's something that should be handled distributed across the team, and just what you have found to be best practices on that front, particularly in terms of engineering teams, but also for cross-disciplinary or for people in other roles.
I think, as I said, project management, I think is more about team management. So if you need to make sure you have the right talent, you have motivated people. There's one thing called working team agreement. I have managed many other engineering projects, not just Taiga, and the key is the whole team's involvement. And a nice, as I said, a nice working team agreement. The working team agreement I found to be great because it is a document that states what is considered acceptable under what circumstances. We also, I think teams should also have this definition of pride concept. And once you make that explicit for your project and everyone abides to it, project life cycles tend to be, never-ending creative process that is very difficult to implement if there's one person that gets all the responsibility. I think people say teams, but what team means, and I think it's the responsibility shared, not diluted. That doesn't get diluted to share. There is transparency. There is generosity, solidarity. There is also what I said before. I'm saying sorry, or saying no, or saying I cannot do this. Team commitment, I think, is much more important and much more difficult to achieve that just project manager decisions, or lead. So if we were able to magically solve team dynamics and make sure that people have this sense of ownership of what they are doing because they participate in decision making, they feel sort of empowered within the team, I think you immediately get the best out of the team, really. Actually, in my world, we don't have project managers. We just have autonomous, independent teams that have some rotation in terms of roles, quality and other stuff. And we make sure that through that rotation, the everyone best factor goes up, of course, but also the this feeling of ownership. In engineering, some people start with this obsession that technology is an end in itself. I will go to this company or this project because I like the technology, and that is fine. I think that's the first level of maturity that you can achieve when you go. You got a degree or you have your first work. Technology. Then you find that perhaps technology is just a means to the project. And then it's about the project, and some people will switch to a different company or different organization because it's the project that is exciting, and the technology is just not so important. But eventually, I think some people get to the third level of maturity. This is my personal view of all this, right? And which is, but whom I'm interacting with, what is the team? What's the people I'm having to negotiate over every day? Who are my peers? Who are the stakeholders? My customer, my friends, or my teammates? And then the product is secondary, and definitely technology is not so much important. So when you get people at the top of this three-tier system that I just described, you probably have the best project management that you can have. But that's very, it's super tough. A lot of people will just remain where technology resides, and that's it. Typically, also you get people just obsessed with tools, then and then you get project, which is much better, but still, it's not the best scenario you can get. I think it's about team. So yeah, that's my particular vision on this. And when we develop Taiga, we make sure that above all, it's about interactions and people and teams.
And continuing on that, what have you found to be some of the most common points of friction in the life cycle of getting a project delivered?
In general, well, I think some of them we already touched upon, but I would say, let me see. First, knowing what to do and who is involved or needed. I think there's a major problem. It's super trivial to say, right? Everyone is like nodding, like, yeah. Well, Taiga can help you by using custom fields. I can provide, a nice template to fill in. So, exactly all this stuff. Also, Taiga allows for multiple assignments, but I think most importantly, multiple role estimation. So, every role in a project is entitled, if defined so, to participate in the estimation, in the definition and estimation of a user story or a task. I think this is very cool. That's one point of friction. A second one is that a project management workflow, I think, suffers greatly when there is either an explicit or implicit split in the team, like creative versus technical. Many tools actually just go for the tech people. The majority tools just go for the tech guys. And Taiga tries to solve this potential split by welcoming everyone. So Taiga is not just the tool for the super techie, it's the tool for the whole team. And I think that really helps everyone on board, Let me see. Another point of friction. Well, people not admitting they are overreaching. This is very problematic because it's not something people say, but well managed is very powerful. So I don't know. Are you familiar with the with Princess Bride book or movie?
Yes.
Yeah. So you probably have heard about the iocane.
Yes.
Poison. So Taiga borrows the concept of iocane, this deadly poison. It's a film from the 1984, I think. So spoilers are okay today. But the idea is this fictional poison that is deadly if you take any dose at any time. But you can get immune to the poison if you take small doses over time, over a long period of time. And there's a moment in the film where that is the solution to the conflict. Now Taiga does use iocane. Explicitly says, is this iocane for you now? Is this user story? Is this task iocane for you? And if you say so, it's not asking you that in this way. I'm just picturing like that. You actually have just an icon there with a bottle of poison. If you say that, it immediately turns your avatar like greenish, like you're ill, and it's a funny way to tell everyone that for that task in particular, you're overreaching, you might be overstretched, you might suffer, and those iocane doses add up. So if you're going through a sprint and you see the statistics and you see 6 iocane doses, perhaps you should go down. Say, okay, it's too many doses. The great thing about this small dose application is that over time, if you have been taking small doses in database and you are a front-end guy, if for some reason you have to take a big dose of that poison, which is database, you will survive. So, there's this little tricks that Taiga will use to prevent those points of friction taking place. That's a nice one. Another point of friction, definition of ready and definition of done. Taiga offers some help there, but not a lot, I have to admit. One that has we come across a lot, multi-project commitment. Oh, that's huge. That is just terrible. We see that all the time. People individually committing to one project, X number of whatever hours or effort or capacity, and then the next project and then the next project, and they don't remember exactly how, but they ended up committing twice their weekly available time. So we need to make sure that these project management platforms do alert you when you are committing too much overall. That is really a major point of friction, because ideally you should be just focused on one project, but it is not that way for a lot of people. They are split over many projects, so you have to be very careful with that. And finally, since we are an agile platform, I think a point of friction is, well, agile anti-patterns. Anti-patterns are all over the place. It all starts clean and simple, and at some point people start wanting the twist, some twist within the agile framework to mimic their reality or their past habits. I call these toxic twists. Those are hard to prevent. Taiga tries to fight hard against these toxic twists. We try to prevent them as much as we can, but it actually goes beyond the tool's responsibility. Although it's true that by saying no to some features that we have been requested, we at least don't reinforce or accelerate those toxic twists. They might still occur, but they will appear much later. So yeah, those are some examples of common points of friction within project management.
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable how many different ways any given project can be derailed, either at the individual or at the team level. But I particularly like what you were calling out with the IO cane and also with the notification of the sort of over involvement in multiple projects as ways to incorporate design as a subtle indicator to give some better context about each individual's commitments and capacity within a given sprint or within a given project, so that other people within the team are able to gain that understanding without having to sort of consciously make an effort to go out of their way and ask about somebody's level of comfort or capacity as far as what they're able to get done.
Actually, that's where we took the name from, Taiga. So perhaps not everyone knows what Taiga means. Taiga is this huge, massive boreal forests, northern hemisphere. They are beautiful, beautiful. It's a beautiful biome, and they're beautiful from the outside. At a distance, you see them. It's like, oh, this is so pretty, beautiful. This is amazing. This is pure nature. But you go into the taiga unprepared, and you die, and you suffer, and you fail because it's deadly. And that was a nice metaphor for projects. So from a distance, the project looks great. Hey, new project, this is amazing. Wow, I'm so excited. Well, if you go unprepared, you are gonna die. I mean, perhaps the metaphor is a bit too drastic here, but you are going to suffer greatly. And so we decided one of the reasons to name our platform Taiga was to give you back that joy in going into the taiga, or in going into the project. So it's like, enjoy your project, finally, or again, or please, I want to enjoy my project. I want to enjoy the taiga. So taiga for us is a metaphor for projects with this from the distance and from within, because all these friction points and everything.
Yeah, that's definitely an excellent metaphor, and I like the multi-level symbolism that you're capturing within that naming.
It's also green, which is great because it's Python.
And so, as far as your overall experience of building and running the Taiga project and the team and community, I'm wondering what you have found to be the most challenging or difficult aspects along the way, and what you have found personally to be valuable or unexpected lessons that you've learned on the journey.
Well, I can tell you it wasn't growth. Growth hasn't been a challenge for us. We were featured just randomly on Hacker News day one. It was just a link, and we got thousands of users right there, 24 hours. So we still have hundreds of new registered users every day. So our challenge has been really bandwidth. We wanted to remain independent and develop the product that we wanted, and it continues to be the case. And we wanted to be also have a sustainable business model. So we want to be have some revenue and use that revenue to further reinvest into the company, and so have paid work. So, but at any scale, you are going to have bandwidth problems. But we have so much potential, and you have to focus. We could do lots of stuff. We have big plans, really, and we have made some mistakes along the way. because we had limited bandwidth and we have wasted some of that bandwidth. How? Well, I'll give you an example. We developed from scratch Taiga Tribe, or might not know about Taiga Tribe. Is a fully functional gig economy platform so that people can publish gigs, pieces of work, and people can bid. You can only upbid because we didn't want this downward spiral of prices. You can only upbid, and we thought, okay, so we have Taiga, and then we have this gig economy. This was 3 years ago, so this idea of gig economy was still not that prevalent, I think. But anyway, we developed a massive platform to be connected with Taiga using Taiga's API, of course, so that you could use Taiga, and for any user story that you were unable to commit or whatever, you basically outsource that to Taiga Tribe, and then Taiga Tribe would just publish it, feature it. People would just apply, bid a bid. You would say, this, I like this guy, I like this whatever, and settle some contract and then join the Taiga project and do that work. That took us a lot of effort and energy, and we didn't have the power or the sales bandwidth to publicize that. So definitely bandwidth, and that is a very good example because it's big and it has a name. But there's some other stuff that is not that big, not that important, and also was a waste of resources. Also, Taiga does feature a SaaS service, software as a service model. Taiga.io. You can go there, you can download the source code, deploy Taiga locally, but you can also just pay for the service online as a SaaS. And also some challenges has been arriving to a correct, a right pricing model. What is the correct and fair pricing model? And we're still working on what is the correct and fair pricing model every time. We think like, is this fair? Is this not as fair as we should? So yeah, it hasn't been technology, and it hasn't been community involvement. It hasn't been a lack of features or a lack of feature requests. It has been just that this is potentially a big platform, and you cannot make mistakes in terms of allocation, capacity allocation. And we have made some mistakes because the bandwidth is limited. If we had millions as other companies, we might be able to waste some of that. Although I feel dirty just saying that. Why waste millions? Just put them to good use. But we have this sustainable model. I think we're proud of it, but it has its limitations.
And one of the things that I do like about the Taiga platform and the hosted offering is what you're saying about the availability for some projects to be public or certain issues to be public so that other people can become involved. And so one of the things that we didn't touch on yet is the idea of onboarding into a project, which is exacerbated when you have new people coming in all the time and trying to get up to speed on what the overall context and goals are for the project and for a given task. And so I'm wondering what features Taiga has to help with that, and some of the ways that teams and project managers can facilitate an easier onboarding experience to either new team members or people who are coming in for one-off contributions.
Yeah, well, in Taiga in particular, it does allow for public projects, and a lot of project management platforms are just all in for private projects. They don't even consider that some projects should be public, perhaps because they don't have this open source mind, and they think, well, people will just want to have their projects private. So Taiga does allow for you to make those projects public as much as you want. You can make just some parts public. You can limit the interactions or the permissions that this anonymous user can do, with those public assets that you're making available. And whenever you make your project public, you are not going to be charged. If you just do public projects, Taiga is free, unlimited public projects. And so you have this discovery section where you can just browse and look for projects that are looking for people, and then you can see, okay, this project is looking for people. I'm going to just go around and see what they're doing, what the teams look like, user stories that are open, tickets, whatever. So it's very nice. Taiga does allow for that, and we came from the community, and we want to make sure that Taiga helps the community. Now, in general terms, I have my own opinion around how a good onboarding process should work for any project, not just Taiga hosted or Taiga only. And I think, there are many things you can do, but I think there are 3 big wins. In particular, software development. One, I think development environment should be super easy to set up locally. The development environment, super easy. You need to be able to just locally deploy that and start, doing stuff. An onboarding process should include know how decisions are made. People should know how decisions are made and how to be part of them, if you can. And if you don't, if you cannot, you have to know that too. And also, finally, to know where is my to do stuff. How is my work going to be tested or validated? You have this development environment locally. The decision making process is clear, and you know what you can do, what you're expected to do, and how it's going to be approved. Then that's great. That is a great onboarding process. Apart from that, people should feel they belong to the project. We're not just coding machines. We're people. So yeah, the concept of team onboarding, I think, is key too.
And given the fact that Taiga is flexible and has all these capabilities for integration and extension for working with other tools and platforms, I'm wondering what have been some of the most interesting or unexpected or innovative ways that you've seen it used.
Since Taiga is non-tech friendly, there are many unexpected examples. But I like when people integrate Taiga into amazing platform ecosystems. We see that a lot. I like, for instance, Fedora. I'm sure you're familiar with Fedora. People that are not familiar with Fedora is the community-driven distribution, Linux distribution by Red Hat, or supported by Red Hat. So they are defining a whole new lifecycle management process where Taiga is or will be central to that. And there's many different tools you can see from their memo. Also, I mentioned this earlier. We were amazed with this email from this guy Alex that had developed a completely fully functional Taiga native app, just because the API documentation was working, was good, was up to date. So from scratch, without telling anyone, that was unexpected, I can tell you. So also, I think the love from the community resulting in all those language translations, that is great. We have right to left support thanks to that, or because of that. But I think perhaps the most truly unexpected ones, or the most innovative, are the ones we don't know about. We sometimes get a glimpse of super big Taiga deployments in super big organizations. I'm not going to name any, but they're super big, well known, and sometimes we know they are doing something massive because we get support tickets that were meant to be addressed to their local administrator, and it's like, oh wow, I shouldn't be reading this. Well, I should be reading this. It's addressed to me, and we immediately say, I don't think we could help. This is unsupported Taiga on-premise thing. Sorry, just contact your local administrator. And then you see many different users and use cases for Taiga. So many of them are either different fields that are not software development, like journalism or lawyers or event management, or through the API, crazy, massive integrations with big ecosystems in very big organizations. So yeah.
And when is Taiga the wrong choice for a given project or team?
Well, if Agile is really not your thing, then Taiga is not for you. You could still use the ticketing system. You have that module, very powerful ticketing system. But if really Agile is not your thing, probably you're not going to get much, out of Taiga. This is going to sound naive, but when you don't trust your team, Taiga doesn't make a difference between roles in the sense of visibility or power. There is permission-based role. We have that, and you can enforce that different people will be able to do different stuff. But in general, people can do stuff and then say sorry. So if you're the type of person that you think your team should be monitored, you don't trust them, they're great people but shouldn't be trusted with the key decisions or decisions in general, you're going to feel Taiga is not on your side. Also, when Taiga is the wrong choice, when you expect the tool to solve your internal dynamics, that is, the tool is going to fix my problem, my internal dysfunctionality, or when you need, above all, metrics, lots of metrics and reporting. If you lean towards any of these use cases, you will feel disappointed with Taiga, because it's not why we build Taiga, to be the replacement for conversations, or to be able to use it for waterfall methodology, or to present lots of reporting and metrics So yeah, when that is your focus, then Taiga's clearly the wrong choice.
And looking forward, what do you have planned for the future of Taiga in terms of the feature roadmap itself, or in terms of the overall capacity for community involvement or business direction?
So we try to make every year like there's a theme, and some years theme have been stability or performance, and years have been features. At the moment, our roadmap is about business wise. We just launched a couple of months ago the supported on-premise Taiga instance, because 2018, believe it or not, we weren't prepared for this, but we got lots of requests for supported Taiga instances, Taiga on-premise. There was a backslash. I think a lot of people that were about to go to cloud, big organizations, just saw this Cambridge Analytica and data theft issues, and even if they know they're not the reason for the attack, they know they could be collateral damage. So they fear that, and they said, okay, it's not the time to go to cloud. So we'll remain, we'll just run our own infrastructure, whether it's cloud or not. I mean, when I say cloud, I mean when it's not your cloud. So we were saying, no, we just SaaS, but you can download Taiga. No, we are SaaS, you can download Taiga. Until we realized there was this huge potential to support Taiga on premise, because a lot of organizations say, if you do not give me support, I won't be able to deploy Taiga. It doesn't work like this in my organization. So we're saying no until we have to say, okay, look, we have to listen to these people. They love Taiga. They just cannot go to cloud for SaaS. Let's give them Taiga on premise. So supported Taiga on premise. Clearly, it's part of the what Taiga's future, or Taiga's present. Actually, Fedora is using Taiga, supported Taiga on premise, by the way. Thank you, Fedora. Great people. Taiga seed time. We have been developing an estimation tool to make estimation process super fun and super efficient. And this is going to be great. It's going to be released, I think, in July, and I think it's going to be loved, by a lot of people. Like, oh, finally, all this tedious process of estimation and team collaboration estimation, this painful process. And I think we have come across the right process with the right level of waste that will make it fun and productive, and you will get some quality, or better than average quality, for your against your typical average estimation process. So Taiga seed time, wait for that. Also redesign look and feel. I want to keep up to date with modern UI standards and best practices. We're going to develop a personal dashboard multi-project thing, so you get a better idea of where you are at in terms of multi-project. Also, not just for yourself, but also be able to say, and Susan, how Susan across multiple projects, and so I think that's going to be great. Also more Kanban goodies. I think Kanban, we have a great Kanban module, but we can improve it and we can make it better. But most importantly, I think we want to reach out to more people, as a community, and we want to continue to grow that community, and perhaps hold our first TaigaCon very soon, I think.
And are there any other aspects of the Taiga project itself or project management in general that we didn't discuss that you'd like to cover before we close out the show?
I think we mentioned the fragmented nature of the market, and I think we are experiencing this this aggregation, or this of in just one company, which is Atlassian. Atlassian had Jira and many other tools, and then acquired Trello. And so you have both ends of the spectrum, right? You have Jira, which is overly complex, super workflow oriented for tech people platform. And now under the same company, same umbrella, you have Trello, which is the simple Kanban-ish workflow thing for everyone. And there is no one that is challenging that. I mean, there are challengers. Taiga is one of them, but there's nothing close to a contender, really a contender. And I think one of the reasons is that project management platform itself, just the platform, is not enough. And we should be focusing on integrating one or two more tools. Not just Taiga, any platform out there, that wants to lead this challenge, or this this fight against the behemoth, because it's so big. I mean, I don't do you remember what was the acquisition? But it was like $1 billion, something like that. Perhaps it was more than that. So the ecosystem, the market, is not just fragmented, but also particularly, I think, problematic. And so from Taiga's perspective, I think we should We should improve Slack, Mattermost, GitLab, GitHub, out-of-the-box integration, and we should do something to counteract this super big player that is Atlassian. Because Taiga, as well as other platforms, belongs to this hypothetical middle ground, and I think a roadmap should reflect that. So yeah, that is something very related to our essence, our nature of a company, our aim. So I just wanted to just share that thought with you and the audience.
Yeah, Jira in particular has definitely been the main player and sort of the canonical association for project management platform and tooling. And it's also the exemplar of the tool that is overly flexible to the point where you can customize it to do everything that you want, but then you have to dedicate somebody for that to be their entire job of just maintaining the installation. And so it's powerful and flexible, but it is also sort of all consuming and requires a certain amount of investment in time and energy to make sure that it continues to be useful for the people using it. And so it's definitely great to have other options in the market that can be more sort of purpose built and more well suited to certain scopes and scales of projects.
Yeah, I think, to be honest, that all people will go for Jira because of Jira itself, but because how integrated Jira is with other tools that for DevOps or for other stuff, for the whole lifecycle management, for portfolio management, and it's like, okay, I know I have to use Jira, but I don't think it is. I think but it is one way to win over the competition, to have the whole ecosystem, and so you came for this, and you have to accept all the rest, or most of the rest. But yeah, that's the nature of our market and our challenge. But as long as we remain independent and we have our agenda, and we stay focused, and we protect our values and what we want to do, that will be okay. We don't have to beat other companies or other platforms. Really, the world is huge, and there's a lot of people just that around the world that just need a nice tool for project management stuff. And so we see huge potential just with newcomers.
All right. For anybody who wants to follow along with the work that you're doing or get in touch, I'll have you add your preferred contact information to the show notes. And so with that, I'm going to move us into the picks. And this week, I'm going to choose a hydration pack that I picked up recently for taking on long bike rides and hikes with the family. It was fairly inexpensive and has I think a 3-liter capacity, so plenty of water for a long trip, and it's got enough storage for snacks, etc. So it was a good price point, good feature set. So I'll add a link to that in the show notes. And so with that, I'll pass it to you, Pablo. Do you have any picks this week?
Well, I have just general advice, or just one thing I would like to share with people. Just I think I mentioned that during my intro, and it's archery. I really believe archery, in particular traditional archery, but archery is a perfect sport, really, for all ages or conditions, physical conditions. It is amazing how it's mentally challenging, more than physically challenging, but it's all about technique. And I would suggest that everyone that has at some point dreamed about archery, this idea of shooting, bow and arrow, check local archery clubs, or if they want to archery in the woods, there is this thing called archery in the woods called 3D archery, which is also fun. And yeah, that is just piece of advice on physical activity that is fun with friends or alone or family for everyone to enjoy. It is an underrated sport.
Yeah, I'll second that. Archery is definitely always a good time. And so I want to thank you very much for taking the time today to share your experience of building Taiga and working with project management. It's definitely something that we all work with in software. So it's good to have some perspective, both in terms of the feature set of Taiga and also just project management in general. So I appreciate your time and effort on that front, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you very much. It's been a real pleasure talking to you.